Well, welcome to our listening audience. It's a great pleasure today to have Senator John Cherry here with us. We're going to have a great conversation about Michigan agriculture and learn his perspective about what he hears from his constituents and agriculture and communities about the important issues, and hopefully get some great advice from him on how to make sure we are aligned with the priorities of the state of Michigan and we're telling our story in an effective fashion. So, Senator, welcome. We look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to join you and looking forward to
Yeah.
chatting.
Yeah. So, maybe before we dive in a little bit deeper to some of the issues, can you tell us a little bit about your background and the sort of role you play in the Senate right now related to agriculture?
Sure. Yeah, so I live in the city of Flint. I
Uh-huh.
represent Flint in most of Genesee County
Uh-huh.
in the 27th Senate District.
Right.
Um, I'm in my first term in the Senate. Prior to that, I served a couple terms in the House, but for the majority of my professional life, I worked in natural
Mm-hmm.
resources. I spent about a decade at the Michigan DNR.
Mm-hmm.
And in my roles there, I started out when it was DNRE, they had combined DEQ and
Mm-hmm.
DNR
Mm-hmm.
in the Office of Science and Policy. And then when it split up, I worked in the Trust Fund
Uh-huh.
Grant Program. And then when Snyder was governor, he had an initiative across all state departments where he wanted departments to work on process improvement,
Uh-huh.
employee engagement,
Uh-huh.
metrics. And I did that work for the DNR.
Right.
And so I got a chance to see all parts of the department
Uh-huh.
and work with my counterparts in other agencies
Right.
at that time, and I think still currently, they were called the Quality of Life Agencies, so it
Okay.
was uh, DEQ, DNR, and MDARD, and so we worked together a lot
Mm-hmm.
and collaborated a lot together. In my role in the I should say so that's like professional wise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm married, and I have two kids, an 8-year-old
Mm-hmm.
daughter, a 3-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
And the in the Senate, I serve as vice chair on the
Uh-huh.
Natural Resources and Agriculture Policy
Uh-huh.
Committee, and then I chair the DNR and MDARD budgets,
Uh-huh.
the budget subcommittee under the broader appropriations committee.
Right. Right. I always love coming to see you, not only because of the great conversation, but I really admire the artwork you have in your office. It really illustrates your passion for the natural resources and the outdoors. And if you don't mind, if I understand correctly, your wife's family has a connection to agriculture, is that right?
Yeah. So my wife is a naturalized U.S. citizen
Uh-huh.
and originally from Peru,
Uh-huh.
and her family uh, has her father's been a coffee farmer for many years. So that kind of got me a
Uh-huh.
connection into agriculture on a personal level.
Right.
Shortly after we got married, we ended up starting a business,
Uh-huh.
and we invested some in the farm, helped them expand the farm.
Right.
We also created a coffee business
Uh-huh.
where we imported the family's coffee and sold it.
Uh-huh.
Now we've kind of started to wind that business down
Sure.
because my father-in-law has Parkinson's and
Oh, okay. Yeah.
not he's stepped back
Sure.
on
Sure.
production. But I'll say the experience we get involved with my in-laws on that was
Uh-huh.
um, I learned a ton. I learned a ton.
Uh-huh.
I'll put it like
Uh-huh.
maybe we'll get into talking a little bit about that
Yeah.
later on. But
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to a coffee farm, but I've always wanted to. That's one of the perks I really enjoy about my job is being exposed to all the difference of elements of agriculture. And Michigan agriculture has its own diversity that's really unique and special. And then you start to talk about other commodities produced across the world. I learn something new every day, and it's why I have the best job on campus.
It's great having a job where you get to learn things all the
No
time.
doubt. No doubt. All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper into the subject of agriculture and Michigan agriculture. In the state of Michigan, agriculture is the state's second largest economic driver. What do you hear from your constituents, farmers, leaders in the agriculture industries about the needs of agriculture in Michigan?
Yeah. So it really the discussion around agriculture depends on what part of the district you're in,
Right.
really. So in my district, I would say we're a very diverse district
Hmm.
in that we have rural areas, we
Hmm.
have suburban areas,
Hmm.
and we have very urban areas.
Okay.
So, City of Flint, urban, you get, Flint Township's a little bit more suburban. We
Hmm.
got small towns like Flushing, and then we got some rural areas like Gaines Township, which is, vast majority of it is farmland, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so depending on
Uh-huh.
what group I'm speaking to, the conversation can be a little bit different.
Sure.
When I talk specifically with farmers, I mean the things that I hear them talking about. Um, Really, a lot of it is, particularly recently, is farmers have talked about really the economic difficulty that exists within agriculture right now. Margins being very thin, and prices not being what they would hope. The ability to, the equipment being very expensive. The most modern equipment being very expensive. Um, I've had discussions, sat down with some orchard operators, and we've talked about some of the labor challenges that they face. Um, ability to have workers to get things done at a reasonable price, um, and then a lot of it can be about concerns about how people interpret that's maybe a bad way to say it. I think there's some I hear about how people perceive agriculture maybe is the best way, or perceive farming, or lack of perception of farming. uh and I say, depending on, if I and so maybe some of the more urban parts of my district, the conversation can be very different. It can be about food access,
Mhm.
access to fresh foods, and it can be about how things can be done locally. And so it just depends on what part of the district I'm in, what maybe the discussion is. I also A lot of discussion more recently about how we make sure the food that we're consuming is as healthy as we can make it. That's been a big thing, particularly in some of the public health folks that I talk to. And MSU, different parts of MSU are very active in Flint area in public health. We have a public health school from MSU in the city of Flint.
Boy, Senator, that's spot on. You hit on the big issues that are impacting agriculture right now. Many of them common, whether we're talking about costs of inputs, low margins, access to labor, and then you also hit on some other issues that are very important, but we probably need to talk more about, access to food and urban farming and things like that. So I can think a whole host of things we could talk about in a follow-up conversation and really have a great discussion. I guess maybe one thing I'll put on the table and make you and our listening audience aware of is we're launching a new program at Michigan State University called Growing Healthy Together, which is really focused on the context of food as medicine and food access in urban areas and try to form unique partnerships between folks that work in soil health, folks that work in, vegetable production or fruit production with people that are vested in local communities and folks like involved in Henry Ford Health System and others to try to build the teams to solve some of these contemporary problems and help, the public. And I got a lot to learn about eating healthy. I'm guilty of not eating as healthy as I should, but help us all grow healthy together because really food food is medicine is a key to part of that. So that's something new on the radar we haven't talked about, but I just thought I'd mention because it's relevant to what you talked about. Is we're really excited about it. So diving a little bit more into Michigan agriculture, we're very proud of the partnerships and how our agriculture industries work together, come together, and do what they can to promote what's best for agriculture as a whole. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that we do produce so many different commodities, over 300, second only to California, but yet we're the most diverse agricultural state in the country with a reliable source of water. So, give us your perspective on how these unique partnerships in Michigan agriculture contribute to the industry's success.
Well, I mean, I think the diversity of the state is absolutely key. Um, and really, I think you see that in just about any sector that you're talking about. Um, there's always going to be ups and downs in any sort of industry. But the way that you protect yourself from some of those um, risks can be diversity. So you talk about it in a stock portfolio, right? Diversity is mitigates risk, and I think having a diverse agricultural industry helps mitigate risk. Certainly, I think Michigan agriculture has a lot of challenges, but I think we have the ability to pivot maybe better than some other states because we do deal in so many different parts of the ag economy, whether it's something like dry beans or, I mean, we got corn, soy, we got sugar beets, we got fruits, we got vegetables, we huge vegetable state. Um, Now, an individual operation, that they still have a lot of significant risk because it's more difficult to get diversity at the local operation. But to the extent that we can provide support from a state perspective to maintaining that diversity, I think it helps the state as a whole.
Yeah, spot on, Senator. Such a major contributor to the state's economy, and we can do even more in the future. Farmers feed the world, and I think that's something farmers should be proud of. And I think it's in the best interest of all of us to talk about that more and adjusting to the times and doing farming in ways that are more sustainable. And I'm a research geek. That's what I do. That's what gets me excited. I believe in the power of research, but it's not research for the sake of research. In my opinion, that's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's research focused on real life impacts. So tell us a little bit, if you might, about what does the legislature look to? How would you define impactful research or the types of research that are really worth that state investment?
So, I'm glad we've kind of started to touch on the research piece.
Mhm.
Um, the any industry that is not innovating is dying. If you're not innovating in manufacturing, you're going the way of the dinosaur. If you're not innovating in technology, you're certainly going the way of the dinosaur, right? We don't we don't have blockbuster video anymore, right? Same. Agriculture is not immune to that. The challenge is in these other industries, you have companies big enough where they do the innovation themselves. It's not to say completely. We have public research institutions that do a lot of medical research and stuff like that. But I think it is particularly acute in agriculture, and I think it is good that we have many, many, many participants, in terms of producers, many, many producers, but none of them are going to have the scale to invest in research on their own, right? That is really where having an investment in research, public investment in a research university is so key because we need to continue to innovate in agriculture in the same way that all other industries innovate as well. But in order to do that at the scale that is needed for our citizens, our farmers, our producers, it needs that public investment. Like we are the government is how we bring everybody together to do that investment that's going to benefit everybody. Okay. So I was at a conference, state agricultural rural leaders conference, month or two back. Um, and I was listening to a uh, dean at agriculture university, and I'm going to forget what one it is in Canada. And they work a lot with MSU. He was talking all about how wonderful how MSU is, but he was talking about research, right? And he was talking about how innovation in agriculture is a little bit different because you're working on different timelines. If you're doing tech research, you can run your simulations very rapidly, but we have biological time that we got to work with in agriculture, so it requires more time and effort in a way to do that same quality of research that you get in some other fields. Um, but the example that he used of the public benefit, and now I'm going to screw this up because I don't farm asparagus, but my understanding is there is one type of asparagus that is the main. Do you know what it is, George? The
I
cultivar.
don't actually,
Okay,
but yeah, I know where you're going.
yeah, it's the primary form of asparagus grown really worldwide, but particularly in Michigan and Canada. We have a lot of similarities between Michigan and Ontario environment wise. And that was developed at a public breeding program
Mhm.
at his university. So not only did the public investment that they made in their public breeding, which is a research, function program there, helped their own farmers. It helped our farmers too, right? And similarly, the work that MSU is doing on agricultural research benefits our farmers, but it's not limited to our farmers, right? We're helping farmers across the United States, across North America.
Yeah, Senator, I'm just sitting here with a big grin on my face. If you ever get tired of politics and being in the Senate, you can come work with AgBioResearch because you did a great job in a real life context talking about the importance of research in real practical terms. And yeah, you're spot on. If we want to talk about specialty crops as an example, and we know there's challenges with access to a labor force that can, work in the fields, and that's a complicated issue for a whole host of reasons. But yet we were talking about the importance of food in terms of helping people live healthy, long, healthy lives. And if we don't solve the labor problems in our specialty crops, we're going to lose them. And part of that is back to the innovation and investment in tools for mechanization and automation that reduce the need for labor, whether you're talking about picking asparagus in an asparagus field or you're talking about tree fruit, on and on and on. There's not the margins. You would never see a private company investing in that. But these are areas through public investment and research where a real difference can be made. And the risk is, putting it in contextual terms, my understanding is currently over 50% of the fruit consumed in this country doesn't come from this country. And it's estimated by 2030 that may be 80%. And part of that is due to these challenges. So if we continue to innovate, like you said, and develop these solutions, that allows our specialty crop producers to continue to feed the world and make sure we have that supply of fresh, wholesome, nutritious food and aren't dependent on importing from other countries. If we let's pivot a little bit, we really appreciate the strong support that you and others in the legislature have provided for some of our signature programs at MSU that are reflective of the partnerships and what makes Michigan agricultural special, like Project Green, the Michigan Alliance for Animal Agriculture, and the Agricultural Resiliency Program. Can you give us your take on why those programs are important and any advice you might have for us in the future in terms of how to better make the case for why they are important?
I might look at it from a consumer perspective as
Okay.
opposed to a producer
Okay.
perspective. So, um, my family, uh, we are we spend a lot of time involved in our food. I'll put it
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
So, um, we bought a half beef from uh, for a number of years now, farmer in Davison.
Hmm.
I second year in a row we bought a hog from, well, the first one was from up north, second one was from Flushing. Davison and Flushing are in Genesee County for your folks outside of my area who might be listening. Um, we belong to a CSA for vegetables during the summer. It's not enough for us, but we are very intentional about trying to eat uh, good food in my household, and I credit my wife a lot. So, in her background, they cooked every day. Like it wasn't uh, ready to eat meals or anything like that. It was from scratch every day, and we eat very well. When I say eat very well, I mean we eat uh, uh, scratch cooked meals on a regular basis. In my household, we're very lucky, and we are trying to, we discovered the Farmer's Creamery, which is like up in Mayo, and we're trying to we try to eat well, um, and we enjoy being out and experiencing the the land, so to speak, whether that's um, state lands, forests, game areas, or whether that is going out and visiting farms, like whether it's orchards or how heck it's usually orchards. That's where you can usually visit in terms of. But we visit maple syrup producers and up in Sheboygan County and where we get stuff there. That type of life experience really is only available because you are doing the MSU is doing the research programs that allow these farmers to constantly innovate and be able to provide those products to us. So I don't necessarily look at it as, because I don't have the hat of the farmer. I can't say exactly how that would those interact with my business. But I know the folks that I'm going to are utilizing that because they've told me, right? They've 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 called and talked to me about those programs, and so the fact that these programs are helping them ultimately helps me as somebody who's a wild fan of the farmers in my area that I get products from.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Senator. Well put. Both your kind of firsthand testimonial of what you're hearing from farmers in your district about the importance of the work that MSU does, ag bioresearch, research that makes a difference, and MSU Extension getting the information out to people who can use it, but also to keep in mind the perspective of the consumers, because they ultimately are the ones that benefit from the end product, and we have to keep that in mind as well. And the experiences you described are so important to the future of agriculture as well.
Well, in farmers having conversations with your customers.
Yeah.
So we understand what it is that you do. Because I'll tell you, and I'm not saying anything your listeners don't already know, right? Nowadays, people are far more disconnected from their food than they ever used to be, right? So the importance of those conversations just increases over time, because that's the primary method where that is when you have the most ability to teach folks what agriculture, what it is to farm, what it is to produce food. When my daughter's chasing around the hen at the orchard, so, like, why do they have hens?
Mhm.
Goes out the other end too.
Sure, sure.
Yep.
Yeah, great example. Well, I know, Senator, I want to be respectful of your time, so we got a couple quick questions here, maybe to go through a little bit more. You touched on this already a bit. What additionally can you share for us, our listening audience, farmers, people in the agriculture community and beyond, about those discussions that are had about at the legislative level around agriculture?
Yeah, this is a great. I really appreciate this question. So I was having a conversation. I serve on these committees. I'm not directly a farmer. I have a little bit more of a connection than I think the average legislator does. But um, I'll tell you what I do. I have a lot of conversation with my colleagues who are farmers, like a Senator Victory or a Senator Daley, and I pick up information from them. So the conversation I had recently with Senator Daley, he's a senator out of Lapeer County, but he represents a number of counties in the Mid Michigan area. Um, and said, "Hey, I was looking at it. It looks like the Farm Caucus is all term limited in the Senate, and it is. Now there might be one, maybe two at most, who might be new electeds coming in next year. Um, but I mean, right now I think we got 5, 6 farmers in the Senate, going down to 1, 2. So why am I bringing this up? It should not be an assumption for your listeners. It should not be an assumption that people know your business. If there are fewer farmers in the legislature, there are fewer people who know what it is you do, what it means, what your challenges are, what your life is like. So having conversations, I'm not talking about coming to a coffee hour and yell at somebody, but like inviting them to experience with you what Michigan agriculture is on a daily basis. That becomes that much more critical for making sure that we're making proper decisions surrounding agriculture. Otherwise, decisions are made without proper information, and oftentimes you make mistakes if you make decisions without proper information.
So important, Senator, and great advice. Certainly a change that we're all aware of, and we're going to have to do exactly what you said, work harder to help people that don't come from an agricultural background understand that agriculture is important and actually experience agriculture for themselves. A glimpse of agriculture and being on farms and things like that can make a world of difference. So as we wrap things up, what advice would you have to myself, others at MSU, whether we're talking about AgBioResearch extension and our stakeholders to better communicate the impact of research and outreach with folks in the legislature, with folks that are farmers and the public in general?
Real world stories. Don't talk about it as research. Show a story where something that was innovated at MSU was implemented somewhere, and what the result was. Make it a real world story. Um, okay, here's why I know agricultural research is important from a first-hand basis. Okay, as we had talked earlier, I married into a farming family. I'll put it like that. We got involved in helping on the operation. Okay, so down there they don't have the wonderful land grant university system and extension system that we have in the United States. We are blessed to have that in the United States because of the things that our predecessors put in place. Not all countries have that. In America's particularly blessed to have it. That we've been willing to invest in that. That being said, me trying to learn things about coffee production. I ended up going to not going physically, but utilizing University of Hawaii, the one place in the United States that produces coffee, publications they put out. Uh, and oddly enough, when I was at University of Michigan, I had one class. It wasn't necessarily agricultural related, but there was a professor who talked about research on coffee farms that she was doing. Well, I went and started looking at it. I was like, oh, I remember that conversation kind of. And I went and looked it up. And those two pieces led me down a road that really had a huge impact on my in-laws operation. And here's what I'll say. So I hope your listeners don't mind rabbit holes. In coffee farming, one of the major challenges is what they call roya, which is translated as coffee rust. It's a fungus that attacks a coffee plant. It's spreading because of temperature changes. It's expanding its range, so to speak. Uh, and it can a bad roya outbreak can completely defoliate uh, a coffee farm, a coffee field. So coffee, it's it's an understory tree, originated in Africa, kind of like a rainforest setting, and it was an understory tree. So over time, uh, production of coffee had shifted from a traditional method where you had overstory trees, understory coffee, um, and it was relatively low input process. It had really evolved over time for the purposes of increasing yield to no shade, uh, high density, high input fertilizer, because they're trying to boost yield, right? High fertilizer. And then when you did all this stuff, you also had to add a lot of pesticides and with Roya, hit it with fungicides. Um, Roya is adapting quicker than fungicides. So, you hit it with this fungicide, and then the next year it's evolved, and boom, you get defoliated and you lose all your crop. Okay. So, the research that my professor at U of M did that I ended up learning about looked at places that were not experiencing the Roya challenges that others were. And what it ended up finding out is that the fungus was being transferring between different places with these little insects. Okay, these little insects are moving around, which in the places, oddly enough, those places that didn't get Roya were not using pesticides, which is kind of counterintuitive. Well, if it's insects, like why is it you know that pesticides are not helping? Well, what they found is like if you're doing full shade coffee production without pesticides, uh, you have a high population of spiders, and the spiders just decimate the population of the insect that transfers Roya. And so this information led us to increase our shade production, no pesticide use, and actually the increase in shade trees, because what we did was put there's a I know the colloquial term for it. It's called guava. It's a shade tree that also is a legume. It fixes nitrogen. We added that to the coffee farm, cut our pesticide use, didn't have to when we ended up testing soil and stuff, did not need to use any more fertilizer, and then we didn't have to use fungicides. So we eliminated our inputs, and I kid you not, I visited, this is a number of years ago, visited, walking to the farm along the path. This on the right hand side was a farm that had gone the opposite direction. No shade, high density, high input. They were completely defoliated. In 10 yards this way on our farm, we had production. That's not to say that we didn't have any Roya. We had a little bit, but the intensity of the intensity of it was very minimal, and what it means, like if you look at, so I look back on our experience, we took research from Hawaii and U of M, changed the way that we were farming in Peru, and we ended up increasing our profit. We didn't increase our yields. We increased our profit margin because we were able to cut all our inputs. We had to invest in, planting different species. But in the other folks there, they had higher yields some years, and then we had higher yields other years because they lost. If you defoliate, you lose your production for the year. And I can tell you, every year we were more profitable because even in their high production years, they had to put a bunch of inputs in. So that is a very long story of my experience, but it highlights the benefit of research informing or research for folks in agriculture in a way that I can tell that story to somebody who's not involved in agriculture and they would have totally understood what I was saying. and I got, and they can understand the value of it. And I don't know necessarily, I'm sure there's Michigan specific stories of different research that MSU has done where you can talk about how exactly it has been implemented on the ground and the benefit it has had for a farmer. And then when people hear that story in their head, they can multiply it, right? They can say, okay, it helped that farmer. I'm also sure it helped, however many more farmers. And then that's one research innovation. And MSU's doing many more innovations than just the one every year, right? So that was a very long answer to say, tell the story, because the story is what makes sense to people as opposed to the abstract idea of research.
What a great example, Senator. I sat there listening to you with a big smile on my face. And I'm going to say it again. The invitation's open anytime if you want to come hang out with us in Ag Bio Research, because what a great example of why research is important in so many aspects of the story you told that are relevant to your wife's family's coffee farm, but also similar challenges facing Michigan agriculture, resistance of pests or funguses to chemical control agents, whether we're talking fungicides, pesticides, other ways to deal with problems like natural biocontrol. And you talked about the role the spiders play and how you create the appropriate environment in a different context, in a commodity we don't produce in Michigan. You hit on some really big issues that are important to Michigan agriculture and some of the similar approaches we're applying. And I love it. You're right on. We are really trying to focus on talking about that real world impact so people can understand the work makes a difference, all the way from farm to fork, and through the lens of the people that actually benefit telling the story. I loved it. I appreciated your passion. It was a great example. And Senator, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a lot of fun. I hope we can do it again sometime, but we probably really need to wrap it up. But I'm going to give you an opportunity. Any last words you want to share with us before we bring this podcast to a close?
Yeah, no. First, I want to thank you for having me. I've enjoyed to be able to, just be able to talk about life. I enjoy it. Um, the I guess the piece that I talked and maybe gave examples that were unique to my experience, but I think that the everybody's context is unique, and the challenges, like Michigan farmers aren't dealing with the same challenges that coffee farmers in Peru
Hmm.
deal with,
Hmm.
but Michigan farmers have challenges,
Hmm. Hmm.
and having MSU working on understanding and finding ways to address those challenges is just as important as having, it fills the same role, because whatever challenges Michigan farmers are having, we need to make sure we have an institution that is working every day to help find solutions to those challenges so that people can have a nice livelihood, that they can have a profitable farm, that they have the opportunity to pass it to their kids, that maybe, somebody who might not have grown up on a farm, but man, really loves agriculture, has the opportunity to actually get into farming in a way and be profitable. Like that is, I think, core to, I think all people want that. Profitable farmers, the ability to have a good business, and the, everybody having access to that as well. And so the fact that we have a land grant university and an extension service who is focused on trying to solve those issues, I think is just so critically important. So thank you for the work you guys are doing.
Well, thank you, Senator. We really appreciate it. I know our listening audience is really going to enjoy this one. Appreciate your time, the ability to sort of convene with you, have the conversation. We look forward to doing it again in the future.
Thanks, I enjoyed it.